Greetings YouTube, it's the Brain Damage Gamer here, and today I have the review for Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This game was a bit of an interesting game for me to review. One of the things you're going to notice is I use a lot of footage from very early in the game. I'm trying to avoid spoilers because the story is actually pretty good in this one, and I don't want to leave anyone wondering what's going on if they see bits and pieces that kind of spoil part of it. One of the things I did want to talk about first with this game is this game is huge. The amount of space that they give you to work in is a decent size. They really do give you a lot of options in regards to what you want to do and where you want to go. The ship is unlocked pretty early in the game, and I do recommend that you kind of work through your way into the story missions quick enough to get to the ship, just because being able to go around on the ship is definitely something that gives you a lot more feel of what you're doing in the world, and the ability to go from island to island really improves on that rich world experience that you can get from the game. Now, this does have the RPG elements pretty heavy. I'm showing you right now some of the clips that the XP I'm getting from killing things alone. It's not that high. If you're trying to level up by just killing things, you are going to be very busy for a very long time. I do not recommend that. Now, that said, there are ways to fight enemies higher level than you. If you're fighting an enemy that's only a couple levels higher than you, it's challenging, but not impossible. You can defeat enemies that are higher level than you. The easiest way, get the Sparta kick and kick them right off of a cliff if you can. It makes the game a lot more fun just to knock them off, because gravity affects everybody the exact same way. If they fall off, they take a percentage of their total health of damage when they hit the ground. If it's a high enough fall, they just lose all of their health immediately. So it doesn't matter if they were 10 levels higher than you or 2. You kick them off a cliff and they fall far enough, they will die. It's kind of a cheap workaround whenever you're running into those really difficult enemies. Some enemies do have stagger block, though, so they don't like to fall over. So keep that in mind. You may end up in an unwinnable fight if you think you can just kick them off and then you can't. And at which point in time, probably better to run away. But trying to assassinate higher enemies has a pretty cool mechanic. This mechanic makes it so that you don't feel like, oh, well, I tried to assassinate them, and for whatever reason, they only did some health damage. Instead, they show a different animation indicating that you weren't quite able to get a lethal hit on them because they either moved too quickly or you messed up the attempt at the stab. For whatever reason, they don't end up with a lethal hit, and then they kind of stagger away, and you end up with the rest of the fight. There's a decent number of enemies you're going to run into that are going to be just barely shy of you being able to fully assassinate them initially, which means you might need to plan on try the assassination move and then hurry up and hit them 3 or 4 times before they can alert anyone else. That's something that I've done more than a few times. I've also, as I kind of mentioned, done the Sparta kick, where I'll go up and assassinate, and then while they're doing the stagger recovery from that, I'll hurry up and kick them off of whatever I'm around. Or as a third alternative, and I've done this more than a few times myself, you can also just go up, assassinate them, run and hide. Once they lose their alert level, run up and assassinate them again, run and hide. It's kind of a cheesy thing to do, but it's functional, and if you can kill your enemy, you kill your enemy. And all of that brings me to the most common enemy you're going to run into that might be a higher level than you, the mercenaries. Now, the mercenaries is a separate tab, and the mercenaries are just kind of a Nemesis-esque system, kind of like Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor. And it's not quite up to par with that same system. You don't really get the same immersion feeling where you're trying to recruit as many as you can. You only get to recruit for the lieutenant positions on your ship, of which there can be a maximum of 4. So once you've filled those 4 positions with legendary people who give you the exact stat boost that you want, there's no real reason to keep recruiting lieutenants. It becomes a waste of time. Even if you find, great people, maybe they're higher level or they have a higher special ability, if it's not better than what you already have, you have no reason to continue the recruiting process. Now, me personally, what I think would have been a good fill-in for this would have been if they had had a similar system to Black Flag, where you could have your people working underneath you that you could then, send off, and they would go get resources or do separate missions to earn you things. And you'd be able to do that separately without having to, oh, well, I've got these 8 guys and I can only use 4, so I guess these other 4 are doing nothing. It would have given you a reason to kind of delve a little bit deeper into that system and have more to do with the system as well. Overall, it just kind of feels like a missed opportunity, and that's kind of sad, because the initial time that I did the recruiting of someone, I was like, hey, this could be interesting, and then it just kind of puttered out into nothing pretty quickly. It felt like a system that they had originally had greater hopes for, and then just kind of forgot about as they were developing the game. And while on the subject of resources, one of the things I am really happy with this game is the fact that if I find a really good piece of equipment, either a weapon or, gear like armor, I don't have to get rid of it as I advance in the game. I'm like, oh, well, I'm level 15 now, so this level 10 gear is garbage. No, if you like the boost that it gives you, the little extra bits, like maybe it gives you 10% extra to your assassin damage, or maybe it does a little bit extra with a certain weapon type that you use primarily. If you like that particular bonus, you don't have to get rid of the gear. Instead, you can spend resources and a little bit of money and upgrade the gear to match your current level. Now, obviously, as you get higher levels, the cost of that goes up and up, which kind of goes back to, I wish there was a different way to earn resources as well. You don't have to do any of the extra crazy stuff to get resources if you don't want to. I've found that just playing the game, I get the resources I need, especially once you start getting enough legendary pieces of gear. You don't really have to worry about a lot of the blue or the purple gear that's, technically more rare, but not as good as the legendary stuff. You can just recycle all of that into the extra materials and then use those to upgrade what you were really wanting to use. Now, you may have noticed on screen what looks like a couple of issues may have happened with this particular fight. I did want to put that out there as well. This is an Ubisoft game, which means that there are glitches galore and things are going to go wrong, like enemies not fighting back when they're getting stabbed in the face for no apparent reason whatsoever. Sometimes that works out in your favor, sometimes it doesn't, but it's still an Ubisoft game, and as per normal, their quality check is pretty atrocious. The game's functionally okay from what I've seen so far, personally, from the PC version. The game runs properly. I haven't run into any major issues in regards to getting the game to keep functioning for me. It crashed a couple of times, but nothing, earth-shattering. We are currently on either the 4th or 3rd version, depending upon where you're playing. From what I've seen, the consoles are on the 4th update already, where I had 4 patches versus the PCs had 3. For whatever reason, they're kind of staggering those back and forth. And on that note, it has been discovered by some game modders who have made it public in the forums that part of what's going on with this game is that for whatever reason, it is an absolute CPU hog. The people that were programming it apparently set it up in such a way that it is constantly refreshing resources it doesn't even need to touch. And because of that, the CPU is always busy, despite the fact when you're running benchmarking, looking at your settings, it's barely tapping into an average GPU. You're not really digging too hard into your graphics card's needs, and your CPU is just running full tilt like it's never done anything in its life and needs to make up for that immediately. But there are plans for fixing some of these issues. The modders in question that I mentioned have already been kicked off of the forums because air quotes cheating is what them pointing out those kinds of problems were. But I'm pretty sure Ubisoft's going to take what they said and just kind of steal their work and hopefully fix the problem anyway. Another thing I did want to make a point of is that the leveling in this game can be taxing. It can be a grind if you're not playing the game in a way that makes sense to you. Now, let me clarify a little on that. You can either go ahead and split main and side missions into two completely separate categories. Right now, what I'm showing you is just kind of a little questy, look and see if you can find this particular item side quest. It's one of those things where you're wandering around, you find basically a clue in the world, and that clue says, hey, you need to go to this location and look for these things, and then you're going to find a table or bench or something on the ground that's going to be able to be interacted with that if you'd been there before, you couldn't do anything with. It's quite literally an item hidden in plain sight. And it's a nice little side quest sort of thing. These kinds of quests, you have no choice but to do them completely independent. You don't get to do secondary things while you're doing these ordinarily. You're primarily just, hey, go here, find this. There are those quests in the game, obviously, and there are plenty of those to pick from. Me personally, what I would recommend is that instead of just focusing on side quests or just focusing on the main quest, what I did, and it kept me leveling up pretty organically. I haven't had any problems with, going to the wrong level or, hey, I've gotten into a fight and I can't deal with it because everyone around me is so strong. I went and accept every single side quest that you can at these mission boards that they have every time I log on to play. Whenever I do that, I'm getting all sorts of, kill this guy or, kill a bunch of this type of enemy or kill that. By having all of those additional side quests, what this does for me is it gives me the ability to be like, all right, I want to go and maybe I do a main mission or maybe I'm just exploring. As I'm doing all of these things, maybe I'm killing, Spartans or I'm killing Athenians or I'm killing, any of the various predatory animals. As I'm doing this, I'm inadvertently a lot of times completing those side quests. I'm getting the additional resources I need and the additional experience I need without having to focus on one thing and one thing alone. At one point in time, I had quests to kill a bunch of a certain type of soldier, while I also had a quest to conquer a certain number of the fortresses. By doing both of those quests at the exact same time, I leveled a lot quicker and I gained a lot more money and experience. It made it easier to keep up with the game, and for that, I personally never really felt a grind from the game. Now, so far, most of these things have been pretty positive. There are still some nitpicks I have with this game, and there's some significant ones, to be perfectly honest. Now, this game does have a cult, minor spoilers, that is kind of pulling the strings, because all of the Assassin's Creed games are about kind of that hidden subplot and the conspiracy that's going on behind the scenes, so it's not really too much of a spoiler. But they feel very cartoony, very, Saturday morning. Well, I'm going to get you now this time, Eagle the Bear, for no real reason. It's quite literally their motivating faction idea is we want power. That's it. There's no overarching that I've been able to locate. I haven't killed all of them. I've kind of looked online for some minor information about it, and everyone said the same thing, that they really just want power, and most of their characters are not fleshed out. It gives you an interesting hit list to go and look for these individual people and kill them off, but it doesn't really give you that feeling of being attached to what's going on with them. They're just a hit list, and that's about it. And the last thing I want to talk about is the microtransactions. This game has some absolutely, positively stupid things added into it. There is no reason whatsoever to sell XP and money boosts in-game. For an additional $10 each, roughly, you can buy boosts that stack on top of each other, getting you way too much XP and way too much extra stuff to, oh, look, you're leveling faster. Oh, look, you're getting money faster. They cut the grind out of the game. That wasn't necessary at any stretch of the imagination. Ubisoft quite literally just said, hey, let's find a way to make a little bit extra money by doing this to players. In essence, they're charging you an additional, fee for cheat codes to give you XP faster. And it was not needed. And it is just a garbage practice that I want developers to get rid of as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, as I say this, there are people out there buying these extra things, which means Ubisoft's never going to get rid of them unless there's some sort of repercussion that happens from them including them into their games. That said, from what I've seen, at least they are not massively obtrusive. You don't have to worry about the store being all over your screen. It's not constantly telling you, hey, go buy this in order to do better. It's quite literally one little tiny button in the corner whenever you're in the main inventory or map area. And on one of the other pause screen, there's one little box that makes mention of the fact that you could go to the store, but that's it. It's not being shoved down your throat, at least. And that is not me defending it. That's saying at least if they're going to put this garbage in, they've done it in a way where it's not immediately in your face. It's nothing like Shadow of War, where they were first and foremost, here's the store, it's a flashing icon, it's trying to draw your attention. They didn't do that, at least. And on the flip side, the one thing that I have always liked, and I'm glad that they've included again, is that you can go into the Uplay Club and actually spend some of your points you get from getting achievements. I've always kind of liked that weird little feature that they've added for quite a few games now, it feels like, where you can get into that little store and be like, hey, I want to spend some of my points I've earned from an achievement from a completely different game, and I want to get, like a little stupid bow or some cosmetic skin, something that, isn't necessarily going to hugely alter my gameplay, but it's an interesting little extra bit you can get. I like that. That kind of stuff give me more of. The microtransactions, get rid of them. Nobody likes them. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. What are my final thoughts? My final thoughts are that overall, this is a good game. It's an interesting game that, in my opinion, has brought a lot back to Assassin's Creed. And personally, I feel it's one of the best games since Black Flag. It's not quite as good as Black Flag in some ways. The ship-to-ship combat's great. It lacks a little bit of the weight that using cannons did, though, to be perfectly honest, but that's just more of an era sort of thing. And for the era, the bows and spears aren't bad, they're just different. But overall, I would give this game a solid 8 out of 10. It would be a little bit higher if it weren't for some of the issues I've mentioned, as well as the store included in it for no apparent reason. And I would put this at a value of anywhere from $50 to $60. If you pick it up in that range, it's a good price. I do not recommend anything above $60. Don't go getting all the crazy editions. They're not worth the extra money. And me personally, don't buy the Season Pass until they actually tell us what the Season Pass is going to contain in a meaningful way. And since they haven't yet, I don't recommend buying that portion yet. Go ahead and get just the base game right now. It's actually worth it, in my opinion. And you'll feel good about your overall purchase because it's fun and there's a lot to do and there's a lot to enjoy about this game. And I am glad that Assassin's Creed has finally released a decent game. But as always, I would like to thank everyone for watching. If you liked the video, feel free to go ahead and hit like. If you're not a subscriber already, feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. I would like to thank everyone for watching. I am the Brain Damage Gamer. Game on.